Friday. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Today is actually not a football Friday for the first time since August. But that doesn't mean we don't have a lot of great stuff for you here on the show. Vinnie Iyer is going to come on the program. We'll talk some coaching. We'll get into the latest in the National Football League. Of course, our guest contributor, as always, from Legal Sports Report. And with Warren Sharp getting ready to go to the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Warren will check in with us to give us the latest on some of the props and odds for the upcoming big game in Vegas. So stay on the grid for that. But would you believe on this show, for the first time, it feels like in a long time, we've got baseball headlines at the top of the show. We're going to do a lot of this, of course, once the Super Bowl is over. But that's where we begin on the program today, as a big trade happened in Major League Baseball. The Baltimore Orioles made two big announcements this week. The first is, of course, they're selling the team. The second is that they have their ace. They acquire Corbin Burns, who's going to front that Orioles rotation in that American League East this season. In return, the Orioles are going to send one of their top shortstop prospects back in return to the Milwaukee Brewers. His name is Joey Ortiz, also pitcher DJ Hall, very highly thought of pitcher as well. So Milwaukee sort of, not taking a full step back, maybe a half step back. Burns was not going to re-sign with the Brewers. He can become a free agent soon. And that is how the deal gets done. So we'll see how Milwaukee does, but certainly this does signal, as we've talked about here on SportsGrid, the Orioles going for it here in 2024, at least to some degree. They needed starting pitching. Now, I thought that was going to be the biggest story of the day, but then this morning, Sportico put out a story that I did not expect, which is Theo Epstein, who's been working in the commissioner's office, of course, former general manager and president of baseball operations with both the Red Sox and Cubs, got them to World Series. He is back with the Boston Red Sox. He's taking part ownership in the Fenway Sports Group. Now, apparently not involved in direct decision-making. Of course, that is Craig Breslow's decision to make. They just hired him as the baseball operations president, but no doubt Theo Epstein will have a big impact on how things move forward in Boston. So Theo, the favorite son, of course, of Boston, getting them that first World Series back in 2004 in like 100 years. He is back. Really cool. Two baseball stories at the top of the show. All right, now let's go over the Super Bowl. Let's go back over and tell you the very latest. That's what's going on. Kadarius Toney was not happy about not playing last week in the AFC Championship. He is officially off the injury report, was a full go at practice. Whether or not he plays in the Super Bowl still remains to be seen. The Ravens have named Zach Orr their new defensive coordinator, the replacement for Seahawks head coach Mike Macdonald. How about the Rams? They promoted their linebackers coach, Chris Shula, to defensive coordinator. He replaces Raheem Morris. And in case you missed this yesterday, Mark Andrews assisted a woman on a Southwest Airlines flight who was a type 1 diabetic. The woman was able to walk off the flight in the end, but it was a legit emergency, and really incredible to see just exactly how people like we see on TV are heroes every single day. So congratulations to Mark Andrews as well for getting that done. All right, let's go over to some college sports headlines. We'll go to some college football. The judge has dropped Ole Miss defensive tackle DeSanto Rollins' $40 million lawsuit against Lane Kiffin. You may have seen the video. This percolated on social media with Kiffin meeting with Rollins, apparently a hidden phone or a hidden camera. But he filed this lawsuit saying he was going through a mental health crisis. He says he was kicked off the team for all these practices and meetings. But needless to say, that lawsuit has been thrown out. New Mexico State's player ejected for throwing a punch versus Liberty. Did you see this video yesterday? Boy, they're just giving us gifts to tell you. Terrible stories. They're giving us gifts to talk about here on the show. Now, this is a very sad one. Mike Martin, who is probably the best coach, one of the best coaches in the history of college baseball, maybe the very best, coached at Florida State from 1980 to 2019. If you want to do the math there, that's a long time. He led the Seminoles to 11 Metro Tournament titles, 8 ACC tournaments, 9 ACC regular titles. He passed away yesterday at the age of 79. So rest in peace, Mike Martin. By the way, Notre Dame's quarterback Riley Leonard has had ankle surgery. He, of course, transferred in from Duke with Sam Hartman going to the NFL. Hartman is participating at the Senior Bowl right now. And Teddy Bridgewater is going back home right here to South Florida. He said that when he retired, he was going to become a high school coach again. And he is now coaching Miami Northwestern High School, which is the school that he played at when he was in high school. So really cool story there. Okay, now we finally got some info on Joel Embiid. This has been really like secretive, it feels like, over the last couple of weeks. We got the diagnosis. He has a lateral meniscus injury in his left knee. He suffered this when Golden State Warriors forward Jonathan Kuminga fell on his leg on Tuesday night's game. The Sixers announced it. So Embiid, has been getting a lot of criticism for not playing in games and even getting fined, which I'm going to get to in a second. But there's obviously a legit injury going on with Joel Embiid, and this is the reason why he's not playing. But the 76ers were fined for not properly reporting Embiid's injury, and this is the violation January 27th against the Bucks. So needless to say, not reporting injuries, but Embiid actually injured and looks like he has very little shot of actually playing 65 games, which would take him out of the running for the NBA's MVP. The Knicks, who have been red hot, are going to have Julius Randle reevaluated in 2 to 3 weeks. He has a dislocated right shoulder that he suffered against the Miami Heat, a big loss for the Knicks, although they continued to play well. And by the way, did you catch this? Tyrese Maxey had 51 points after being selected to his first All-Star game for the Sixers in their 127-124 win on Thursday night. All right, over to golf we go. Live Golf begins their season today in Mexico on the hinge, of course, of Pebble Beach getting underway as well. The first tournament, by the way, that John Rahm is going to be playing in Live Golf. This was a very big story yesterday in Formula One. We're calling it a bombshell, or at least Michael Cohen is calling it a bombshell, or Sam or someone. Lewis Hamilton is moving from Mercedes to Ferrari next season. He's a 7-time world champion and has won 103 races over in Formula One. So naturally, big story there. Billionaire Peter Thiel is backing and funding the Enhanced Games. It's a rival to the Olympics that will allow athletes to use performance-enhancing drugs. My goodness, true story. And as I mentioned earlier in the program, Theo Epstein now taking part ownership in the Fenway Sports Group. Kind of unexpected, just kind of popped on the radar for us this morning. Theo Epstein, by the way, it's been implicitly said, not going to make the baseball operations decisions, but will advise and certainly make a lot of his opinions heard, I would guess, in Boston as well. So that's the very latest news, notes, information, everything we got for you here on SportsGrid. Okay, so a couple of quick notes I wanted to give you here about SportsGrid as we head into the weekend. First and foremost, Davis Maddock and I are back tomorrow morning recapping the entire fantasy football season on Fantasy Sports Today. So for those of you who are looking to get an edge for next season or want to take a look back, tune in tomorrow morning right here on SportsGrid. We've got that for you. Next week, we've got Super Bowl coverage like crazy. We are already in Las Vegas. A lot of our crew's already out there. I will be on the air here on NewsWire, 11 a.m. on Monday morning. We'll have Larry Krueger, who, of course, has worked in local radio in San Francisco for a long time. We'll talk about the Super Bowl, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. But the rest of the week, I'll be on noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. Just a heads up. Vinnie Iyer joins us.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks playing one touchdown pass, right? You can't win MVP with one touchdown pass.
I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's one game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting Above the Rim, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the rack. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. We put a bow on the NFL coaching cycle for 2023-24. I think it's fair to say both 23 and 24 because we saw both. Vinnie Iyer is with us to review that cycle. It was just a couple of weeks ago that Vinnie and I were here on the show, and we were like, all right, Bill Belichick, where's he going to go? Falcons, Panthers, I don't know. What do you think? Commanders, what do you think? Oh, maybe Dallas, maybe Mike McCarthy. Bill Belichick goes nowhere, Vinnie. And so here we are. We've got a lot of coaches to talk about here, some fascinating stories, and some general managers to dive in as well. But I'll open the floor to you, Vinny. You've got the list there. You see all the names. How about this? Give me your favorite hire, and give me the most surprising hire for you. How about that? I'm going to throw that curveball right at you here to start the show.
Well, this top hire is very easy for me. It's Jim Harbaugh all the way. I mean, we didn't know if he was ever going to return to the NFL. We thought, okay, he's in his happy place at his alma mater. They're winning national championships. He's going to be good. No, his heart really was in the NFL and returning. And he says, okay, I'm going to pick the one opening where I feel great about the quarterback, right? And Justin Herbert was that. So Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, I would think this is going to be a perfect marriage here. Offensive-minded coach who fixes quarterbacks, offenses at a high level. So that's great, right? So surprising, I think you could say that about several of these, but I'm going to say it's Dan Quinn, the last hire, because the Commanders, they were going after the big names, right? Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, who was once on their staff, and we know how hot they were offensively, right? Coaching for the Lions and Texans this year. And then Dan Quinn, look, it's the guy that was in Super Bowl 51, a defensive-minded coach. They just fired the guy that was in Super Bowl 50, a defensive-minded coach. So I don't see where there's an upgrade or change in the philosophy here with the Commanders. And you have to keep in mind, they're sitting on the number 2 overall pick. So you would think the biggest thing they need to do, much like the Panthers getting Dave Canales or the Titans going Brian Callahan, get a coach in there that has the offensive skill set to say, okay, we're going to turn around this number 2 pick as quickly as possible, much like we saw the Texans. But we also saw the Texans work with their offensive coordinator. So, look, I was just surprised that they went to the Cowboys and went with this, where I think you can tell just based on the Commanders' fan base. Are they very excited? I don't know. But you know the Chargers, whoever's out there, those fans are really excited about getting Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, no, I agree. And listen, Vinny, it's low-lying fruit. We're going with Harbaugh right at the top there. It's going to be a story all
Yeah.
next year as well. Okay, so general manager-wise, we do have an opening in New England. It's a very big hire, by the way, for the Patriots.
Yeah.
They basically have had Bill Belichick doing things for over 2 decades. They're going to have to find someone. But Tom Telesco goes to the Raiders. Adam Peters goes to the Commanders. And Dan Morgan, who I loved as a football player, by the way, University of Miami played, then Carolina Panthers. He's going back home to Carolina. And I kind of appreciate these first time hires. I guess what I would say is going through them here a little bit, Vinny. I'm super concerned with everything going on with the Panthers. I just don't know like what their plan is, and this owner just seems to just like keep changing pieces on the team. Doesn't care about paying guys, paying 3 coaches, paying GMs, whatever. I'm a little worried for Dan there. But beyond that, what do you make of these GM hires?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to borrow for the 49ers. They're a good organization. So the Commanders did well there. And that's why I think I was a little surprised that their hire was a little bit more inspired on the coaching side. Now, Tom Telesco, look, it's been up and down with the Chargers, but overall, track record of success. He's had some really good draft picks. They just haven't been able to put all the talent together. And I think they just wanted a fresh start with him and Brandon Staley leaving. So that's a pretty good get from the division for the Chargers. Now, you look at the Patriots. Yeah, this is going to be a tough place to fill, right? I mean, they're just used to Bill Belichick being in control of everything. So who can they get to work with Gerard Mayo? Because on one hand, you're staying in-house with Mayo, but what are you going to do with the philosophy of your team going forward? So I'm surprised that it's taking them that long to find their direction here. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to put them a little bit behind more than they would like under Robert Kraft going forward.
Well, I think that there's some, at least one of my producers here, Michael Cohen, Vinny. There's some idea that maybe the Patriots just don't want to spend money on their coordinators and bringing in general managers. I mean, look, I mean the writing is on the wall at this point. They're going to have to do it, and in order to win, like you have to invest in the front office, right, Vinny? Like there's just no getting around what these guys are costing. I mean, there were reports that Ben Johnson, remember him, that he was looking for like the highest paid coach in the NFL, or he was going back to Detroit. I mean, Robert Kraft may not want to do it. He's got no choice, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough now, especially now that the process has started with the Senior Bowl, with the pre-draft, not having a general manager in place there to look at the draft picks and get a head start on that ahead of the combine and pro days and then free agency and working out the budget. So there's so many layers to figuring out the rebuilding of a team of personnel. They got to figure out where they're going at quarterback. That's a big question, right? Right away in the middle of the draft. So I just think about this. How many questions the Patriots need to answer? And I think they're a little bit slow in the process, given how quickly they were ready to go with Gerard Mayo.
All right, well, let's move on to some of the Super Bowl specials here, Vinny. I love tossing these out here, too. These are via FanDuel. Okay, like the same game parlays. Like, Vinny, this is what people like to do. They're $5 and throw it in there. Yeah. So let's take a look. Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy to combine for 50-plus rushing yards, and that's plus 160. Okay. Chris Jones, okay. Nick Bosa to record a half a sack, plus 200. I'm going to show you all these, and then you can pick one. Okay. Super Bowl repeat, 49ers to score no points in the fourth quarter, plus 380. Wow. Okay. Christian McCaffrey to score 2+ rushing touchdowns, plus 420. Why do I like that one the most? And it's 4-1. Something's off with me there. I feel like for the 49ers to win, that probably has to happen. I guess the fear would be maybe Debo gets the ball near the goal line too. So, Vinny, you're inundated with these. I'm sure over at Sporting News, you're going to have a column or a piece on your favorite props. And this is something, by the way, that we're used to doing, even with sports betting being legalized over the last few years. We used to do this previously too. When you look at any of those, any you want to throw in to your column this week?
Well, if you're feeling weird that you like McCaffrey, then I must feel really weird because I like McCaffrey a lot here. Because, look, you're almost given the one touchdown. He scores at least once every game. So you're already starting there, and he's been consistent. He scored 2 touchdowns in both playoff games. So why wouldn't he have another game, right? He's the main guy that they're going to give it to near the goal line. That's the weakness of the Chiefs defense. You can run on them. So you figure McCaffrey, he runs on everybody. He scores on everybody. That's what I feel the best about. Now, I think the one trap sitting out there is the rushing yards, right? People are going to look at Brock Purdy. what he did in the championship game. But keep in mind, his prop for that was 7.5 yards. He went way over that with 51 in the game, but he's not a running quarterback. And Patrick Mahomes, when he's on his best day scrambling, it's about 30 yards, right? It's effective, but you're really working with a very extended number there, well over what you can expect in general from these quarterbacks. But McCaffrey scoring twice makes a lot of sense. I do like some of the Jones-Bosa situation, but keep in mind, it took a long time for someone to sack Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. I mean, it was very late in the Ravens game where that happened. So I'm not sure Mahomes is going to go down even once in this game. So that's the thing. If he doesn't, then you're definitely going to lose out on that one.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, Vinny. So we will catch up again next week here on the show. I'm going to be looking for a couple things. I'm going to be looking for your official Super Bowl pick over at Sporting News. That's number one. And number two, I'm going to be looking for a couple of props. All right. So get ready because I want all the opinions I can. Super Bowl is coming. It's our last day of the football season. I expect it, Vinny. All right. Be ready.
Yeah, I'll dig deep there for you. I'll look way down the board because that's where the value is going to be in this Super Bowl, not where the marquee names are. I guarantee you that.
I agree. Every year it is the same. All right. Vinnie Iyer, Sporting News. Vinny, have a great weekend. Thanks for coming on. All right, coming up next, our buddy Pat Evans. He's shoveling snow. I believe he's got to be shoveling snow today because my wife's in Michigan too, and she says it's snowing. Be right back.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing one touchdown pass, right? You can't win MVP with one touchdown pass.
Hey, I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's one game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. It was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like, OKC just rolling into Detroit, going like, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
fascinating developments happening in Georgia with the possibility of sports betting being legalized in the future. Let's bring in Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report to dive into the very latest. And Pat, once again, it's great to have you here on the show on a cold Friday, I know, for you in Michigan. Maybe not as cold as where my family is right now. But regardless of that, let's get to the big news here. A big push for Georgia to get things going as far as legalized sports betting. And Pat, I don't want to get people too excited. It's not like this is happening this year. But we've seen stranger things happen, like in Florida and Kentucky and other places too. I'm getting some good vibes that there's a possibility in the future that this happens.
Honestly, Georgia's really kind of surprising me. I mean, and I'll go through them. There are some huge caveats here. But yesterday was a huge day for southern states. I mean, both Georgia and Mississippi, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, were able to get a sports betting bill through their respective chamber of origin, which is a very big deal this early in the sessions. It kind of shows there's a little bit of a priority here, and they want to get it through so the other chamber can work through whatever issues are over there and just whatever issues might be between the chambers. But in Georgia, Clint Dixon, Senator Clint Dixon sent over or introduced a bill last week to legalize online sports betting through 16 licenses, including, 8 that are tethered to sports organizations, 1 for the Georgia Lottery, and an additional 7 through just an open procurement process run by the lottery. In his introduction, he said that because it is run by and funds programs through the lottery, that you don't need a constitutional amendment. Now, if you've watched this program and heard us talking about Georgia before, that's a little bit of a sticking point for a lot of lawmakers and sports betting proponents. There's some who don't think it needs that amendment, such as Dixon, and then some who do, like Senator Bill Cowsert, who introduced an amendment yesterday on the Senate floor to change the language to make sure this bill does, necessitates a constitutional amendment, which needs to be approved by voters in November. So this was a overwhelmingly approved amendment, and then the bill was overwhelmingly approved, and it now goes on to the House, where there will be some issues. I talked to a source. He said, this was quick, this was great, it was smooth, but it's not an open and shut case. There are going to be some struggles in the House. Who's to say the tax rates are right, the license rates are right? I had multiple sources telling me a conference committee is kind of expected. That means, there's the Senate version and the House version, and then they're going to have to get a couple of people from each chamber together and kind of wrestle out the details of what exactly sports betting in Georgia might look like. It certainly seems like the amendment is here to stay, and that will require a 3/5 vote on the House side as well. And then, of course, it needs to go to voters in November, which by all accounts, I imagine the Georgia voters would kind of be okay and pass it. And I think the bill right now has a July 1st start date, if I remember correctly, of 2025. So it is possible that Georgians have sports betting by next summer, by the NFL season for sure. And, of course, again, the House could be a huge problem. In the years past, we've seen sports betting kind of die in Georgia because of other issues that have come up. The Republican majority has opponents within it, so you can't just have one party vote for sports betting. You need that bipartisan support, which on the Senate side had a lot of it. It was about 12. There were 12 sponsors. They're about equal of Republican and Democrats. Who knows what's going to happen on the House side and who's going to kind of fall into line there. So still some questions, but it's a promising start in Georgia, and that's certainly moving quicker than I think I would have expected to start the year.
Yeah, no, and again, just getting it rolling is sort of the key. It's so anti, so the other way in California and some other places. This is a good sign. Another good sign for Mississippi. Mississippi trying to get that online going. They send a sports betting bill over to the Senate. Have you had a full chance to digest what this says, Pat, and kind of where things stand there?
I mean, it's a pretty similar situation, honestly. The House, Rep. Casey Ure was one of the leaders of the online mobile sports betting task force in the fall, which was created by his legalization bill last year. And he's straight up said, I used the information from that task force to inform my bill. I don't, at the time he said, I don't know that it'll pass the House, and I can't guarantee anything in the Senate. But I mean, he introduced it on Monday. He got it through his own gaming committee on Tuesday, and by Thursday, it's through the House. So it's a very rapid pace in Mississippi, and it's kind of the same situation where you're like, okay, maybe this is just getting it over to the Senate, letting them iron out whatever details, and see where it goes from there. There were some interesting kind of wrinkles yesterday. On Wednesday, it was supposed to get a floor vote, but then I heard from a source that there was some tax issues coming up among the reps. And sure enough, yesterday, Iyer amended the bill to, rather than an 8% state tax and a 4% local municipality tax, to just do 12% to a state emergency road and bridge fund. So that was kind of solved there. But yeah, kind of the same issue as we have in the House in Georgia, we have in the Senate in Mississippi, where it's just kind of like, do the chambers agree? Do the parties within the chambers agree? As we've talked about before, heading into this year, we had a lot of kind of differing opinions on what the presidential national election will have on sports betting state by state. Again, you've got people on both sides of the aisle in Mississippi who like sports betting, and people on both sides of the aisle who don't like sports betting. So you do need that bipartisan support. And in a election cycle, in a presidential election year, anything can kind of happen where parties just kind of batten down the hatches and don't want to work together. So that's certainly something, the further we get into the session, might happen in Mississippi or Georgia. So again, kind of up in the air. It's just a surprising state because, they've had it since 2018 in casinos and geo-fenced online apps within those casino properties. So this really is a very kind of simple step, you would think. But you're getting a lot of pushback from local casinos, local casino independent operators who are saying, we don't want the big casino operators, be it Caesars, MGM, whoever, to come in and just dominate the market. There were a couple of discussions yesterday where they thought, well, if we have 26 operators, can't they all just partner and pay all the casinos? And there were some interesting suggestions and to that point, because, they don't want one major casino getting FanDuel and making the little casinos kind of pay for not having a big partner. So there's going to be a lot of vocal opposition from them. And, a lot of lawmakers certainly won't want to upset them. So again, a huge step forward, lots of time to figure out these issues. But they haven't gotten it done this far, so who knows if they get it done this year.
Yeah, no, I think these stories are so great for the beginning part of the year, because I like to check back at the end of the year to see if we made any progress on these, Pat. It's like 50-50. Sometimes we do, sometimes not. Okay, so the big story at the end of last year, going into 24, I would probably say going into 25 as well, is this focus on iGaming, which is so wildly popular. And it's so funny that I don't follow it at all, but it's so wildly popular that all of these states want to legalize it because they want to be able to take, action on it. And Maryland is the latest state that wants to do this. And the reason that, again, it's so curious to me is because it's like, it's not in my wheelhouse at all, but I understand how popular it is.
Yeah, to your point, it was. But now that, 38 plus states and U.S. jurisdictions have sports betting, the industry is turning to iGaming. There's a huge amount of revenue potential, both for the operators and the states. And Maryland's one of those states that's seen their expenses go up, but their revenue's coming down, or at least going flat. And so, Senator Ron Watson wants to use this to have a huge boost to Maryland tax revenue. And that's what you're seeing in a lot of these states. But we only have 6 iGaming states in the U.S. And talking to people at the National Council of Legislators from Gaming States earlier this month, it's February, isn't it? Last month, a lot of industry professionals have kind of rolled back their expectation that there would be a huge wave of legalization and saying, okay, we're going to slow it down. This isn't going to be like sports betting where it just kind of sweeps across the nation. It's going to take a lot of educating, a lot of, holding hands through this process of, everything we're going to do to protect consumers and the like, and why it's important to regulate it and not have it be unregulated and offshore, all that. And Maryland kind of is that one state that people are like, maybe they can get it done this year. But so far we've had a little bit of pushback again by, casinos worried about cannibalization and lawmakers worried about what going online might do to local employment. So there's a lot of questions around there. I talked to, a couple industry sources who said, this is, again, a big conversation starting point. It's a good start. Maybe something gets done this year, but regardless, we're just going to chip away at it and see if we can get that to happen. And that's in Maryland, that's in Indiana, that's in Illinois, New York. There's lots of states that are kind of there that want to get it done, that people think can get it done, but it's going to take a few years probably.
Do you have a Super Bowl pick, or you want to save that for next week?
Let's save it for next week.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Pat Evans is a little cagey with me here on the show. I get it, though. Wants a little bit more time. Pat, have a good weekend. Hopefully no snow shoveling. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, I'll see you next week, Craig.
All right, we got Ben Stevens coming up next. He's got his video on the Super Bowl, and then we got Warren Sharp in the house before the big game. We'll be right back.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing one touchdown pass, right? You can't win MVP with one touchdown pass.
Hey, I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's one game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the rack. It was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit, going, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. We're now going set for the Super Bowl. That's right. We're sending all of SportsGrid out to Las Vegas. In fact, Warren Sharp is going to be headed out there as well. But before we go here on this Friday, let's take one look at how things stand before everyone heads out to Mandalay Bay and, of course, the stadium where they will play that Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Here's Ben with a preview.
Craig, the Super Bowl 58 countdown has officially reached single digits. We are 9 days away from Super Bowl Sunday in Las Vegas between the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. And Craig, yesterday we saw our first bit of true movement as it pertains to that spread. Let's take you through the certain stops where we have seen this number for a Super Bowl 58 matchup between San Fran and KC. The hypothetical line in a potential matchup between these two sides before conference championship weekend had San Francisco at a 3-point number as the favored side. After conference championship Sunday, Kansas City victorious in the AFC, San Francisco the champions of the NFC. The number opened up quickly at 2.5, was immediately bet down to 1 and a hook. Some line movement working back for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. A lot of the public money, Craig, is on KC. 77% of the handle at the FanDuel Sportsbook is with KC on that spread. But then yesterday, we started to see that movement work back to Brock Purdy and the 49ers. Now a 2.5-point spread in favor of San Francisco. The over-under has remained steady in the hypothetical line where it opened up on Sunday night, and even where we stand here now, just 9 days away from Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas, the over-under is 47.5. That is the lowest total, Craig, we have seen since Super Bowl 51 way back in February of 2016. In fact, in the last decade of Super Bowls, we have seen 6 underdogs win outright, 4 favorites win, 3 of those favorites cover. The only time in the last 10 Super Bowls, Craig, the spread has come to factor in at all. Super Bowl 56 between the Rams and the Bengals. LA was a 4.5-point favorite. They won by 3. The Bengals did cover, although ultimately falling short of the prize of the Lombardi Trophy. Quickly here in terms of the trends, 2.5-point number in favor of Brock Purdy and San Francisco. Just 6 times this year, Craig, the Niners were under a touchdown favorite with Purdy starting under center, both 4 and 2 straight up and against the number. For Patrick Mahomes, the narrative continues on. Can we bet against him as an underdog in his career? 12 starts as the QB for Kansas City when the Chiefs have been booked as the dog. They are 10-1-1 against the number, 9-3 straight up. 9 days away from Super Bowl Sunday in Las Vegas. Craig, we will continue to chart where that market moves.
All right. Thanks very much, Ben. Of course we will. We'll be doing it for another 9 days. Before we go any further, though, let's bring in Warren Sharp. It's time now for the Sharp Report. Prop market right now is set. A lot of props out there, probably some more still to come. Let's go over some of the big game odds with Warren Sharp as we bring him on here on this Friday. Warren, you ready? Here we go. It's almost Vegas time. Should be right in your wheelhouse and ready to have some fun.
No, I'm feeling good. Not yet ready to have the fun. The fun's on the horizon. I'm still doing my, crossing my T's, dotting my I's, figuring out the last little bits here of edges for both of these teams as I get, pages and pages full of analysis, because I do think the edges in this game are razor thin. Of course, knowing the way that these Super Bowls go, it's not going to end up being decided by one of these edges. It's going to end up being decided by a turnover, a coaching decision, like some big inflection point is going to occur. But you can't handicap those or predict those ahead of time very easily. So you have to dig into all the minutia to try to figure out what the small edges are and see if they'll add up to ultimately determine who's going to win this game.
Yeah, that's the key there. The edges are so thin with one game to go, so much time for the books to make the odds and prepare. But that's why we have Warren. And, of course, coming up on Monday and next Friday, we will go through it all with Warren on those. We will take a look at one prop for the big game over on BetMGM. And this is the odds to win the MVP. And generally, Warren, it's been a quarterback-driven award, and you can see that with the odds here today. Mahomes is plus 125, Purdy is plus 220. I'm always interested to see which year a player not quarterback is going to win. I don't. I mean, you probably have done a lot more research than me. It feels like there's like a cycle, maybe 6, 7, 8 years, and then somebody else wins. McCaffrey has the third shortest odds at plus 450. Kelsey at 14-1. Boy, wouldn't the world love that? And then Isaiah Pacheco at 35-1. I've been watching this for a long time, Warren. Back in the day, in the 90s, I used to go over a friend's house. We used to write who the MVP would be on a piece of paper. And, it was like $2 an entry, something like that. And then I'd always kick in like a defensive player, like Darryl Green or, I didn't have Larry Brown. Like I'd throw in some crazy name just to see if it would end up happening. Is there any value in doing this? Obviously we're talking about it here. I'm guessing you do have an opinion.
Well, look, the hard part about this is if you're going with the quarterback, Patrick Mahomes obviously seems like the player that you would want to be going with. And that's sort of a de facto bet on the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, the Kansas City Chiefs, they're in the Super Bowl 2019, there's a really good shot that he should not have won the Super Bowl there. Should have given it to the running back. But guess what? Patrick Mahomes still won it. And that's before Patrick Mahomes really was Patrick Mahomes. Now, this would be his third Super Bowl. So it's really going to be hard to upseat him to claim that crown if the Chiefs win the game, in my opinion, even if there's a decent defensive effort. As long as Mahomes doesn't crap the bed, I do think that award is his to take home. On the other side of the ball, though, look, there's so much discourse over Brock Purdy and what's he doing and how good is he, and he's going up against one of the best pass defenses in the NFL. And if we have time, we'll talk a little bit about how these two quarterbacks have fared when they have gone up against elite pass defenses. But Brock Purdy hasn't done so well going up against elite pass defenses. Meanwhile, you got Kyle Shanahan, who stuck his head in the sand and just ran the football a ton last week against one of the best run defense in the NFL in the Detroit Lions. So odds that he doesn't come out and try to run the football a lot against this run defense of the Kansas City Chiefs, which is significantly worse than their pass defense, would be very surprising to me if they did not come up with that strategy. So I think we're going to see CMC early and often, and I feel like it's somewhere written into Kyle Shanahan's contract that he has to get Christian McCaffrey a touchdown each game, or he's going to be docked some pay, because this guy just continues to love to feed Christian McCaffrey the ball. And I mean, the odds at him scoring like 2 touchdowns are not even abnormal. Like this guy's odds to score 2 touchdowns. So if you're in the Super Bowl and you're a running back and you're topping like 70, 80 yards and you're punching in a couple of touchdowns and your team wins the game, I mean, unless there's Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback, there's a good chance you might be the one winning that Super Bowl. So I do think the odds favor CMC a little bit more than they do Brock Purdy in this one, even though running backs are rare to win this award.
Yeah, no, I think so. And look, you know what I find? I don't know. You'll do the research here, and I don't watch it nearly as close as you. But here's what I want to know. Next week, you'll tell me when your team goes back and looks at this. It seems to me that when the 49ers get the ball around the 6 or 7 on first down, Warren, and I don't have any data to back it up, so you'll have to please take care of this for me. It feels like Debo gets the first carry. They get closer, and then they give it to McCaffrey on second down. But Debo could get that touchdown from like the 8 or 9 yard line. I don't know. That's the way that I usually see San Francisco play.
Yeah, it's possible. Look, I really felt like they were running CMC, I don't say into the ground. He's still a lot of bursts, but they weren't giving anybody else touches on the football until the very end of that game when they allowed Eli Mitchell come in. Otherwise, it was just every single run play was to CMC. There was no breathers whatsoever. I think in this last game, especially with Ayuk a few weeks removed from that shoulder injury, like there is a better chance that we see Debo Samuel with a couple of runs this week than he had last week, obviously.
Now, Warren loves coaches in the NFL. I don't know if you've noticed this before. He's a huge fan of every coach in the National Football League. I'm being facetious. But let's take a look at the coaching hires. The most recent one, definitely, I would say probably the most curious one in a league that everybody is pushing offense. The Commanders go back to Dan Quinn on defense. The Seahawks this week hired Mike McDonald. Falcons with Raheem Morris. Panthers, Dave Canales. Chargers, Jim Harbaugh. Titans, Brian Callahan. The Raiders early on made Antonio Pierce the full-time coach from interim, and the Patriots, of course, once Belichick was out, they named Gerard Mayo the head coach, and no Belichick on the cycle this year. So do you have to be an offensive coach, Warren, in the NFL to have success? Can you be a defensive guy and bring in a great offensive mind? Because here's what I would say. Dan Campbell was an offensive player, But when he was with the Dolphins as head coach, he did not run this offense. It was nothing like this when he was interim guy in Miami. Brings in Ben Johnson, the whole world changes for him. Can Dan Quinn get away with this? Can a defensive guy come in, bring in the right offensive system, and succeed?
Look, I think he can come in and do that. The question is, will you get any type of longevity? You're not going to have a Kansas City Chiefs type situation in this scenario because that offensive mind is going to be poached, just like Ben Johnson should have been poached away from the Detroit Lions this past offseason, but he just decided for one reason or another, or maybe for a multitude of reasons combined, that he wanted to give the Detroit Lions one more run. But, his horizon is there. You can see it. He's going to be gone very soon. More than anything, the Commanders just want somebody to win football games there. So I don't think even if you have the brightest mind come in for 1 year and the Commanders have a successful year, that guy is then going to become a head coach somewhere else the very next season. So I think they go out. It's going to be very vital that they go after a very intelligent offensive mind. And I'm really curious to see what that's going to look like. But he'll be there for a couple of years, even if he is brilliant. And that's all that Washington wants really right now is they're just desperate to turn this around and to start down the path of winning some football games. And so can Dan Quinn succeed? I mean, obviously it's going to come down to his defense. That's what his staple is going to be. He's going to be known for it. Does his defense get any success, anything close to what he was able to do down in Dallas with far better talent than they've got in DC? But clearly the biggest and most important hire that he's going to make is going to be that offensive coordinator.
Yep, agreed. Okay, real quick, general managers. This is, these are the guys we usually do not talk about, but have that major impact on the team at the end of the season. Tom Telesco, is this a curious hire for the Raiders? I mean, was there success? I mean, talent-wise in LA there was, but it never showed on the field. Commanders bring in Adam Peters, new owner, new GM, makes sense. Dan Morgan, he'll get paid if it works out or not. I don't know that it matters because they just keep paying people to go away, and the Patriots haven't hired anybody yet.
Yeah, the Tom Telesco one is intriguing because it's rare to see a guy get fired at the GM position and then get hired again without any type of lapse there to be GM of another team, especially one in the same division. So that one was a little bit curious to me. He must have interviewed well and said a lot of positive things. And, of course, the Raiders saw what it was like to face the Chargers in the roster that they had. I thought the roster was undercoached, so that could have been one benefit for his speech there to get in the door. I think Washington, I'm excited about the Washington one because it's a little bit of a different direction, and I'm interested to see what they do. Don't have a lot of knowledge about what they're going to be doing down in Carolina. Obviously, this is a team that's in sore need of improving the direction and trajectory, and they need a lot of work. So the work's cut out for Dan Morgan for sure.
Yep, without a doubt. All right, great to see you, Warren. I don't know when you're headed out. When are you headed out? Can I ask that?
Monday.
Okay. I will catch up with you from Vegas. Have a great weekend.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing one touchdown pass, right? You can't win MVP with one touchdown pass.
Hey, I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's one game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the rack. It was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit, going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. On Sunday night, we will not have the NFL to watch, but we will have the final season, episode 1, of Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I've been a huge fan of for, it feels like 20 years, and I think that's about right. And by the way, while Larry David was promoting his upcoming season, which by the way he says will be the last, he went on Bill Simmons's Ringer podcast and essentially said that he will never go back to SoFi Stadium ever again. He went to one of the games there, I guess, at a football game, said he couldn't speak to anybody. I couldn't even hear anything. Couldn't even have a conversation. Said it's like a show. You can't even talk to anybody. Epic rant. I don't know if you guys want to check it out, but needless to say, there are very few, and when I say very few, I mean very few shows outside of SportsGrid, which is appointment viewing, that I will want to watch live. A lot of this stuff I'll stream or watch the next day. I would say Curb Your Enthusiasm is close to, or if not right at the top of the list, like Breaking Bad was, or Better Call Saul, The Shield. Very few of my favorite shows all the time. I'm like, I have to be watching this live. I think Curb Your Enthusiasm is right there for me. So I may be actually watching live TV that's not sports for the first time in a long time coming up this Sunday night. All right, that will do it for our show, our week of shows. Best of luck to Sam, our producer. He's headed out to Las Vegas for Super Bowl coverage, so Michael Cohen will be producing with me all next week. He's got his work cut out for him. I'm so difficult to work with, he knows. So, Sam, good luck. Michael, I'll talk to you on Monday. We'll be right back here, by the way, on Monday as well. Thanks again to Warren Sharp, Pat Evans, another one of our guests here on the show today, and, of course, Vinnie Iyer from Sporting News. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning for our next edition of Fantasy Sports Today, as we put a bow on the fantasy football season, myself and Davis Maddock, and then Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker on Sunday. By the way, special edition of Fantasy Sports Today, Super Bowl Sunday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. 4 hours of fantasy DFS prop coverage. Can't wait to see you then. Have a great weekend, everyone.